Hello and welcome to the How to Thrive podcast. This podcast is hosted by me, Claire Sanders, and my sister and co-founder, Helen Silver McMahon. Together, we are on a mission to empower individuals and teams with the human skills they need to thrive, maximising performance, minimising risk, and optimising well-being. If you'd like to find out more about how we can help your practice, please get in touch via our website, www.being-human.co.uk. I'd like to take a moment to say a huge thank you to our sponsors for the How to Thrive podcast, Flank. Flank is your in-house legal team's first AI colleague. Flank introduces AI native agents who are designed to integrate seamlessly into your existing systems, empowering legal teams like yours to work smarter. They instantly resolve commercial team requests, eliminate bottlenecks, and enable your legal team to operate at the speed the business needs. But this is just the beginning. At Flank, they firmly believe that the future isn't simply about better software. It's about building towards a future where fully autonomous AI colleagues will own entire workflows end to end, deeply embedded into your tools and systems. This is the new generation agentic engine that's redefining what's possible for in-house legal. If you'd like to find out more about Flank, have a look at getflank.ai. And if you get in touch with them, please do mention How to Thrive, so that they know that it came from one of our wonderful listeners.
Be kind to yourself. And when I'm deploying to one of these incidents, then is not the time to be thinking, am I really cut out for this?
Hello, Helen. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you very much. The sun is shining. It is a good day.
It is a good day. It is a good Monday.
Oh yes, Mondays. Just so infrequent in this time of April and May. I just looked at my diary and I was like, wow, there's not many Mondays this next few weeks, is there? There wasn't one last week.
No, I know.
There's
one
next
Monday
week.
next week. Well,
No.
there is a Monday next week. There's a Monday every week, but next Monday is also a bank holiday.
I know.
What a joyful time we are in.
I know.
I don't know what's got into me. I think I've had too much sunshine already, and it's only lunchtime. Have you been doing? What have you been up to? Actually, I know the answer to that question. That's such an artificial question and inauthentic. And we're going to talk about authenticity today. It's an inauthentic question because we were both in the glorious Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yes.
Having a lovely, joyful time at the VMG Veterinary Management Conference last week, which was delightful. I was geeking out at some of the lectures. Went to a brilliant one by Calvin Eden on communication, who had us all up, high-fiving. And then went to another fantastic one with someone we hope will come on the podcast, a guy called Simon McCabe, who was really interesting about behavioural psychology and about generational differences. But I loved the fact that he was really focusing on kind of the retiring age and people retiring earlier. So I thought that was really interesting.
I liked that lecture because I think we so often forget that end of the spectrum. And actually, if there is things that we can do to keep people in jobs and keep people happy longer, then we should definitely be doing that too. So, and I think the days of early retirement, well, sadly...
But isn't the point that when people retire early, then we kind of lose all of that experience from the professions, and so we need to kind of keep all that experience in. But how do we do that? Because like many of us, the thought of sailing off into the sunset and living on a desert island kind of trumps sitting at your desk.
Yeah, a little bit maybe.
So how do we
keep
How do we do that? But really, really interesting session. I mean, it was Helen and I geeking out at the front, basically.
Totally.
Like, has anyone got a question? Me, choose me.
Yeah. We had all the questions and we spoke to him at the end, didn't we? We were just like loving it. And
I had many conversations with people about what a lawyer was doing at a vet event. Lots of conversations around why law and veterinary is actually very similar. Not all prompted by me. So that was all very, very interesting. So I had a lovely time.
I know, it was a really nice conference, actually. I always enjoy it. And they, something that we try to do is to bring in other people from other industries who can share experiences that are really uplifting for people. And I always feel like VMG managed to do that nicely too. Certainly bringing in Calvin is always good fun and gets us motivated and what have you. So,
and talking of our favourite speakers and our favourite guest speakers, we've got good old Nige. So Nigel Taberner spoke at How to Thrive the legal event last March, is speaking at How to Thrive, the vet event in September. Get your tickets at being-human.co.uk.
Subtle.
Phenomenal. Took us all on such a journey in his session. He is a former hostage negotiator, and I'm not going to cause any spoilers, but he is a phenomenal speaker and a brilliant podcast guest.
Yeah.
So should we crack on?
Crack on.
Here's Nigel. Welcome to today's episode of How to Thrive. How are you doing, Helen?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Perfect. We've had our normal technical difficulties trying to set this up remotely, but we are here now, and we are joined by the phenomenal Nigel Taberner, who I am incredibly excited. I've just noticed, actually, Nigel, we're recording this virtually, and it says Nigel Taberner. Are you Nigel or Nigel?
So the only person that calls me Nigel is my mother.
Oh,
okay.
Sometimes if somebody shouts Nigel down the road, I don't even turn round.
Won't do that then. Let's just call you Nige.
Just call me Nige. Otherwise, I'll think I'm in trouble.
Probably, yeah. But we met Nige kind of actually really kind of serendipitously, I suppose. We were hosting one of our events, How to Thrive, and we thought, right, we'd like someone to come and speak at it who knows something about listening. Who might that be? I did a bit of a Google search, hostage negotiator, and Nigel came up. And actually, it is one of those serendipitous moments, because I feel like, you came and you did your keynote, you stuck around afterwards. We've talked since then. Your son's doing law, and now here we are recording the podcast. It's been a real privilege to get to know you. So
I've been avoiding you ever since, but it's just
no, I've nailed you down. That's it. I've nailed you down. But we start with all of our podcast guests asking them really for a brief summary of what's brought them to where they are now, and the journey and that wiggly line that we all seem to go on throughout our careers. So I think we're in for a really exciting one here. So Nigel, let's start with you.
Mine is a really wiggly line. I mean, I was your typical teenage boy. I wanted to be a police officer from being about 4, 6 years old. It's all I ever wanted to do. But I was your typical teenage boy. I switched on about 6 months before my O-levels, completely and utterly blew them. And instead of plan A, which was sixth form university, joined the police as a graduate, I was working in a bus building factory in Wigan, age 16, lying under bus chassis covered in old tea bags and half-eaten sandwiches. So it wasn't a good start. But I kind of stuck with it. I knew that ultimately I was going to become a cop. It was just going to be a different route that I was going to take. So I applied when I was 21, which was the youngest you could join Greater Manchester Police. I was successful. I'm still not sure exactly how that happened, but it did. And I joined the police, and I had a bit of a whirlwind, really. I had a 30-year career with Greater Manchester Police, and it was amazing. I had some great jobs. From starting off running around the streets of Moss Side for 8 to 10 years, when it was kind of its kind of peak Gunchester period in the early 90s, to working in what was essentially the riot squad, and then public order training, and being involved in some really sort of high-end jobs there. I'd spending an awful lot of my service in counter-terrorism in one role or another, be it at Manchester Airport or in counter-terrorist searches or chemical, biological sort of warfare preparation and stuff like that. So I got to do loads of stuff. But my last 10 years was probably the most exciting, and that was when I took on an additional role, an additional responsibility of becoming a hostage negotiator. And that was just life-changing. The skills that I learned as a hostage negotiator didn't just make me a good negotiator. They made me a better police officer, for certain a better leader, but a better dad, a better father, a better friend, because the skills I was learning just covered all those areas. It impacted absolutely everything.
So do you get a huge amount of training as you go through, or is it, are you sort of trained to the nth degree how to be a fantastic hostage negotiator, or is it something that you taught lots of transferable skills as you progress through the police force, and they all culminate in that one activity? How does it tend to work?
I honestly believe the toughest negotiations that I was ever involved in were in training. I've had people killed over the phone. I've had people had fingers cut off over the phone. And you know what? It felt real and it hurt. The first job that I ever got given when I was a negotiator, I was in work. I got a phone call. It was 2 weeks after I'd done the course. So I'd never negotiated with anybody. And I got this phone call saying, we've got a guy barricaded into a house. He's doused the place with petrol. He's got a gun. He says he's got a baby in there. He's in the bedroom window with a lighter and a gun. Can you go and speak to him? So I said, yeah, sure. I'm on my way from the airport now. I'll just get changed. So I get in the car and I'm driving to it. As I'm driving to this job, I got a phone call, and it was from a really experienced negotiator who I was going to be working with, because there's never a negotiator. There's always at least two of you. And I was working with him. And I was thinking, oh, this is great. He'll take the lead. And I picked the phone up, and his first words out of his mouth were, I take it you want the lead on this one. And I just went, oh, yeah, go on, I'll do it. And just kind of jumped in with both feet, because I honestly believe if I said no to that, it would have been so much easier to say no the second time round, and no, and then it becomes a problem. So yeah, it was like, yeah, I'll get in there. And to be honest, we always put the least experienced negotiators up front doing the talking anyway.
Why is that?
I can see you cocking your head and thinking, why on earth is that? That's because, so if you've got two negotiators at an incident, one's been doing it 10 years, and the other one's been doing it 2 weeks and never negotiated with anybody. Instinctively, you think, well, put the experienced negotiator in.
Uh-huh.
But if I get stuck, if I run out of words, if I don't know what to do, then this other negotiator really has got a very limited amount of stuff that they can do to help me. Whereas if we put the inexperienced negotiator front and centre, I'm stood behind him or her, and they get stuck, then I'm in a position to help them. So it's counterintuitive, but that's what we do.
It makes a lot of sense, though. It may seem counterintuitive, but it makes a lot of sense when you explain it. So now you tour the globe talking to corporates and the wider world about your skills as a hostage negotiator. And I suppose the question, which I think would be awesome to understand, is how on earth can hostage negotiation be relevant to us corporate souls who spend our lives behind desks shoveling paper? To oversimplify it. Why what picked me, the Google up for me to go hostage negotiator as somebody who might be able to come and support us at our event? What's the transferable skill there?
It is so relevant. You deal with people. You want to influence people. You want to get them to change the behaviour and do things differently. And so do I. And it's exactly the same process. I've got to get somebody to like me, get them to trust me. And now actually I've earned the right to be able to influence them, to be able to reframe things, to be able to make suggestions and to get them to do things differently. It's all about people. And the core skills, certainly, being a hostage negotiator is not difficult. Once you get your head around a couple of concepts, it's not difficult. First of all, it is not a negotiation. Don't have negotiations. Have conversations with a purpose. Have meaningful conversations. That's all it is. If I'm having a conversation with a guy who's waving a gun around out of his bedroom window, if I can ignore the fact that he's got a gun, it's a conversation between two guys. But we make things so complicated. I had a business I was working with a couple of weeks ago, and they said, the thing is, Nigel, you don't understand. We're negotiating with Tesco. And I said, hang on, wait, let me stop you there. You're negotiating with Jenny and Steve. They just happen to work for Tesco. So what we're going to do is develop a relationship and work with Jenny and Steve. It's not tough. So that's the number one thing. It is not a negotiation. It is a conversation with a purpose. And the second thing is you've got to get them talking and keep them talking. That is the key skill of a hostage negotiator. It is managing a conversation and then listening like a life depends on it. If I can get you talking and keep you talking, you will tell me things that you never intended to say. Because irrespective of what anybody may think, You cannot control what comes out of your mouth. If I give you enough room in a conversation, you will fill it and you will tell me things. And I'm a classic example of this right now, because all you're doing is getting me talking, keeping me talking. And I'm saying things that prior to this interview, I was thinking, right, I'm not going to say that. But that is the skill of a good negotiator. Keep the focus on them, get them talking, keep them talking, listen like your life depends on it. Because if I can do that, if I can get you talking and keep you talking, then you will tell me all this stuff. And all the time as a negotiator, I'm thinking, what did she say? What did she mean? How can I use it to influence her? It is not tough. It is so not tough. It's just a conversation. That is all it is. It's easy to say.
It's funny. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, I was at a course last week and they were talking about a listening exercise, actually, that we didn't do. And, you know, in the listening exercise is essentially you get into pairs and one person talks to you for 5 minutes and the other person isn't allowed to say anything. And I thought, oh my God, this feels like my idea of hell. Like, I think I need to be gagged. But actually, I think that level of deep listening is something that we just are so out of practice for doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now.
You can always tell when somebody's not listening because they'll say to you, go on, I'm listening. If you have to tell somebody that you're listening, it's because you're clearly not. You're on your phone. You're going, yeah, go on. I'm listening. Or you're tapping away on your computer. Yeah, go on. I am listening. You're not. Number one rule of listening, you can't multitask. You've got to give it the time and the respect that it deserves. And it will pay you back dividends. It will pay you back time and time again. The number of times that I've been negotiating with somebody and inexplicably, after 3/4 of an hour, they've said to me, can I put the knife down now? Can we, can I come down? Can we stop this now? And I've said, yeah, sure. Come on, come down. As we've been walking to an ambulance or a police car or something like that, I said, if you don't mind me asking, why? What made you change your mind? And the number of times that people have said to me, because nobody has ever listened to me like that before, is it's incredible. And it tells a story about how good we generally are as a society about listening.
And when you arrive at a scene and you're kind of thrown in, I suppose, to it, how do you, because often starting a conversation is the hardest thing for anybody, even when you know someone already, it's always that slightly artificial. But I'm guessing, do you have tricks to try and ease people into a conversation without, how's the weather? Isn't it an awful day? Small talk, it doesn't really feel like there's much space for small talk in those situations.
You'd be surprised. But there's some stuff we can do. The first thing is just to be yourself. And that's the big thing. You just gotta be yourself, be your true, authentic self. So I'll be looking to get them talking about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. That's the easiest way to get somebody talking. Throw a bit of flattery in, but get them talking about themselves. And then the thing I'm looking for is commonality, something that we share, something that we have got in common.
And would you always be truthful within that and genuine? You see, I don't know, they wouldn't be like, oh, I like playing the piano, and me too, I love it. That's
a really good question, because it'd be quite easy to pull a fast one and tell little white lies, or to I suppose kind of trick somebody because of the vulnerability or something like that, to get them to stop doing what they're doing in the short term and to get them to give themselves up. But in the long term, that's never going to work. I will tell them all sorts of things that they don't want to hear, things that are tough, rather than actually lie to them. No, of course, you're not going to get arrested. Come down. Nobody's going to get locked up here. And then as soon as they come down, they're trussed up like an oven-ready turkey and thrown in the back of a police van. It doesn't work in the long term. So yeah, I'm always going to tell the truth, but I'm going to tell them that in a nice way. And you know what? Sometimes a little bit of civility and a little bit of respect, all that goes such a long way. You can tell people hard truths. You can tell things to people they don't want to hear. But as long as you do it in a way that is open and honest, and actually, do you know what kind? Then that is so much more acceptable, and you're far more likely to get a better result.
It's interesting because Helen, you speak about like ego states and about how, you know, you've got the adult child, and then I'm completely having a moment now. What's in the middle? Adult,
Parent.
child, and parent. That's it. Parents in the middle, at the top. Parent, adult, child, and how you want to stay in that adult space. And you know, this really resonates because actually, you know, if you start patronizing them or, you know, talking down to them, then you're talking to them, you know, it becomes that parent child as opposed to the adult place where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to get to a position where we are in an adult to adult position. Very often when we get there, that's not the case. You're dealing with highly emotive situations, sometimes inflamed with alcohol or drugs or that kind of thing. And you've just got this massive amount of energy. You've got this massive amount of emotion, and very little rational thinking. And what I've got to be able to do very, very quickly is trying to restore that rational thinking, and reduce the emotion. So we're actually, in terms of transactional analysis, which is what you're on about, we're able to work on an adult to adult basis.
What would you do to do that? Have you got any kind of tricks as to, often I say to people, if you're in a conversation, if you're managing a problem with incivility, if you realise in that moment that you've been pushed into parent or they've been pushed into parent and somebody's going to child, to stop, walk away and come back. Obviously you don't have the luxury of going, hey, I'll come back tomorrow. I can feel you've gone into child mode.
Yeah.
How do you rebalance that?
So I think it's by making sure that you remain in that kind of adult mode yourself, that you don't allow yourself to be affected by the other person. So, you know, nobody ever wanted to negotiate with me. 130 incidents, nobody ever wanted to talk to me. And some of them were abusive or would just shut you down or whatever. It's quite easy to have a strop or a sulk or to take it personally, when actually the knack is, I've turned up, I'm the hostage negotiator, I'm the informed professional that's going to come into this situation. I'm going to bring a sense of peace into this crazy situation. And that actually is quite infectious. But generally speaking, it's about giving them room in a conversation to sound off and not shutting them down and telling them what they're saying is unacceptable or arguing with them. I might not agree with them, but I'm just going to let them get on with it.
I feel like, although despite the fact I've heard you speak, I'm really learning. And again, thinking about actually this is so relevant for the life we all live and the world, and especially like the corporate world we operate in, because, you know, giving people that element of space, affording them the civility and the empathy and the humility and all of these things, it's just something I don't think we pause enough to reflect on and adopt. Just so
and the
important.
things you're talking about there are what people will wrap up and say are soft skills. I hate the term. There's nothing soft about it. If I'm using these skills to manage a conversation, if I am listening in the way that I am, in order to get you to tell me stuff that I'm going to use to influence you to do things differently, actually there's nothing soft about that at all. They're just really good people management skills. Because as we go through life, whether it's your kids, whether it's your dog, whether it's the people that work for you in your team, whether it's your school kids, if you're a school teacher, we're all in a position every day where we've got those touch points where we need to influence people. It's all about influence. And these skills are key. You can't just, you can influence people by telling them how to do things to a limited degree. But actually, when you start to use these skills and use some empathy, use some understanding, you speak to people with a civil tongue, then it is so much easier to get into influence things. That's one of the biggest problems in policing in general. Civility. They're always having to deal with that. And I know, Helen, you're big on this. But I remember that it's kind of folklore within Greater Manchester Police. There was a complaint came in to an inspector There'd been an armed raid at a drug dealer's house. They'd gone, instead of going through the window, he'd barricaded his front door. So they went in through his conservatory. So they smashed through his conservatory and then smashed through his back door. And they'd hit the conservatory that hard that as they were going through the back door, the conservatory physically collapsed. The roof fell in. The sides fell in. It was absolutely boom, boom, boom. They went in the house. They pointed guns at him. They dragged him out of bed. They dragged him downstairs and put plastic cuffs on him. And he put a complaint in. What was the complaint about? Was it about his conservatory being trashed? No. Was it about his back door being wrecked? No. Was it about having guns shoved in his face and being dragged out of bed? No. They had abused him in front of his 4-year-old child. They called him names in front of his 4-year-old child. It was about civility. It wasn't bothered about his house getting smashed up. It was about how he was dealt with as a person, the respect that he was afforded in front of his 4-year-old kid.
Yeah. And then, what example is that setting to the 4-year-old as well? Because, Helen, you talk about the impact that civility has on witnesses as well. And, yeah.
And on modelling behaviour, right? When we know that when people have sort of bad behaviours modelled, then they have that choice, don't they? Maybe they will see that in the future as the way to get things done and adopt that kind of behaviour. Nigel, as you're talking, I'm minded of one technique that I'm not sure whether you've heard of, but something that I talk about sometimes, which is when we have clients that are very emotional, perhaps upset by many and varied things, unfortunately. And now Cookie, my dog, you might be able to hear, is just also feeling a bit incivil outside the door. She may need some hostage negotiation in a moment. Sorry, back to what I was thinking about was the technique, if we can call it that, of the midnight DJ. Have you ever heard of this technique? Because the way that you speak so smoothly and you've got such a lovely accent and what have you, I am, as I'm listening to you, I feel very, very calm. And I was just thinking, this is sometimes when I teach people about using the idea of this calm, smooth tone to sort of when you've got people who are very angry or upset in front of you. It was just reminding me of the way that you were talking. I was just like, oh, he's anaesthetised me.
I could never fall out with him.
No.
So on the first hostage negotiators course I was ever on, I remember the trainer saying to me about using your Saturday night DJ voice. And he would say, he said to me, you've got a really nice tone to your voice. You need to use it, and intentionally speak slower and probably deeper than you ordinarily would, because when you're nervous, it comes out faster and higher pitched than you intended anyway. So it actually comes out sounding as you want it to sound. And he said, just practice using your voice as an instrument. And I've done that ever since. So, I try to modulate the way that I speak. There is a double side to that, though. It's a bit, you have to be a little bit careful with it. When you're dealing with somebody who is emotional, if you just stay absolutely kind of deadpan, it can come across as, you're not interested. You don't get it. A little bit like, computer says no type thing. When you've got somebody who's if you've got a complaint and you go and see somebody and you're absolutely ranting and they're just remaining dead calm, they're going, I'm really sorry, nothing we can do about it. There's that horrible disconnect. So we don't mirror people's emotions. So if you're angry, I don't get angry. If you're sad, I don't get sad. But what we do is mirror their energy.
Yes.
So I will change the way that I communicate. I might start talking faster. I might start talking slower. I might raise my voice a little bit. But kind of what it says is, I don't really know what's going on here, but I get there's something going on. It stops that horrible disconnect of, it's like when you stop speeding by a traffic officer and you're a little bit kind of wired because you were doing 38 and a 30 really. But they're dead calm and they call you sir 3 or 4 times, if it's a bloke, obviously, or madam. And there's just that horrible disconnect because the more agitated you are, the calmer they get, which is why people end up getting locked up for public order offences, because it winds them up.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So now that you're not on the front line, and I imagine that the adrenaline highs and lows of being on the front line are, pretty all-consuming. Do you now have you had to replace that adrenaline? Do you become an adrenaline junkie? Have you had to replace those adrenaline hits with something else?
I used to say, this is going to be really weird, I don't share this very often. I used to say that I miss negotiating like I miss my right arm. But I'm not too certain now. About 8 months ago, something like that, I was walking around the supermarket with my wife, and my phone must have done some kind of update or reset in my pocket, and the dial tone, the ringing tone, reverted back to its original tone, which is the one I had when I was negotiating, and it went off in my pocket, and the physiological reaction scared me. My heart pounded, my stomach hit the floor, my hands were shaking that much I couldn't physically get my hand in my pocket to get the phone out. And I was thinking, and it was just down to this dial tone or this ringtone, and I was thinking, I don't remember it being like that when I was negotiating, and I'm sure it wasn't, but it just made you think, kind of what was I putting myself through at the time in terms of the effect on your body and probably your mental well-being as well, because it will not surprise you to know that the level of support that we got from the organisation was not best ever.
Yeah,
we got support from our colleagues, from those other negotiators in the cadre, got that kind of shared experience. But actually, in terms of support from the police, I'm hoping it's got better now. But at the time, it was pretty poor.
We often talk about debriefs and the power of debriefs. Is that something that was, I know you said you didn't get fabulous support, but within your team, was that something that you found a way to do to debrief with people, or was it easy to request a sort of a catch up or a chat with people after something had happened to talk it through?
Yeah, and that was really important. I think hostage negotiation is probably one of the most reflective areas of policing that I actually worked in. We were really keen to learn from our mistakes, because every negotiation we were involved in, we would make a mistake. A sign of a good negotiator is a negotiator who can dig themselves out of a hole when they've got themselves in a mess. So we were very often, all our negotiations were recorded. So initially it was an audio recording device. It ended up towards the end of my service, body worn video. And we would very often, if we'd had a negotiation which we thought, I just didn't feel quite right, or we would give our recordings to other negotiators, another experienced negotiator, and say, just have a listen to that and see what you think. If it was a 12-hour negotiation, you'd say, just have a look at the first hour, because I just really struggled to connect. What do you think I was doing wrong? So yeah, debriefs, major incidents were always debriefed, and there was a lot of learning that came out of them. But even the small stuff, I just didn't feel right. Can you listen to my tapes? What helped an awful lot.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. We always ask our guests, put them on the spot right at the end, and ask them for their top 3 tips for thriving. I'll give you a minute to think about that, but also just to say that if anyone's got the opportunity to hear Nige speak live, then please do it, because I can honestly say, when you spoke at How to Thrive, it's probably the one that most people talk to me about since. Actually, it's like the roller coaster of the journey. I think you had us laughing, crying, like my heart was in my mouth, and all the time I learned a huge amount. So I will really remember that session, and hopefully you'll come back and do another one for us, because it was an amazingly impactful session. So it was brilliant.
Definitely. And I've had the opportunity to listen. I think last year was the year of the hostage negotiator for me. I think I listened to 3 last year, and I have to confess that you were my favourite, Nige.
That's so nice.
Aww.
And I often say, so my favourite hostage negotiator taught me this.
Can you imagine? I hope we never get to the situation where Helen needs a negotiator and she'll be like, oh, I've got my top 3. I'm going to bring them out of retirement. But there we go. So, Nige, your top 3 tips for thriving, either professionally or personally, a mix of the two. What keeps you thriving?
Right. Number 1 tip, be kind to yourself. We talk to ourselves in ways that we would never, ever speak to other people. And when I'm deploying to one of these incidents, then is not the time to be thinking, am I really cut out for this? When you get that little voice in the back of your head saying, you're not good enough to do this, you just need to banish it. In that moment, I am not a hostage negotiator. I'm the hostage negotiator. And you know what? We're going to debrief. We're going to learn from the mistakes that I make. But at that moment, I'm the hostage negotiator. Which leads me on to the second one. It's about continually learning. It's about continually developing and growing, as an individual and growing your skills and just being the best that you can be in the circumstances that you're confronted by. And I think the other one, last one, and it's probably a little bit off the wall, is, do you know what? Don't take life too seriously. I've seen life at its worst. I've seen it at its toughest. I've seen what life has done to some people. And you know what? Sometimes, have a laugh about yourself, laugh about your mistakes, and just don't take yourself too seriously at all. Don't believe your own press.
That's wonderful.
I thought as a hostage negotiator, I was going to be irreplaceable when I retired. I thought, you think you're having that conversation, you go in, do you know what? How are they going to cope without me doing this, that, and the other? Do you know what? I think 10 minutes after I walked out the door, it was Nigel who.
That's
not in that sense, but in a professional sense, the organisation absorbed me up very, very quickly. So yeah, don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, really, really, really wise tips there. Love it. I think that be kind to yourself. I mean, if we think about everything that you've just said about how to talk to hostages, not to hostages, or to people who have taken hostages, if we could mirror that internally and talk to ourselves in the same way, I think how much happier and healthier I think we would all be. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. And I can't wait to hear you speak again.
Me
thank
too.
you.
I don't want it to end.
It's been really good to speak to you both. I can't believe I've been avoiding you so long.
So that was the wonderful Nige. Always, honestly, listening to him speak still brings tingles. I just can remember the feeling he brought when he spoke at How to Thrive in March last year. And I think it's because when you read his bio and you see a picture of him, his bio is really, obviously really powerful. Former hostage negotiator. And he's a big guy. He's a big guy. And he doesn't really look like this. I was going to say a big cuddly teddy bear. Sounds very patronising. But he doesn't. But then when you meet him and you speak to him and you hear him speak, he's so calm and kind of confident and just automatically exudes warmth in the way that he is. You just can't help but enjoy listening to him.
Yeah. He's a great storyteller. That's it, isn't it? He hooks you in, whether it's when he's on stage or just chatting, he's great to listen to.
But also, I guess, it's probably that's made him an incredibly successful hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
Because of I think about this, because of the tempo he talks at, the tone he talks at, all of those things just bring the whole package of you feeling kind of safe and that you want to share. And, we talk about this in the podcast, but, this whole kind of talking adult to adult, it's not parent to child. It's just a very measured, very calm conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, very powerful.
And I suppose that kind of builds the trust with people really quickly. And I don't know about you, but when you think there's a hostage negotiator on their way, you might imagine them to be very scary police person who is very authoritative, but he gives off such an ability of being on your level and that you could talk to him sort of like a friend. I can imagine that's incredibly powerful in those very difficult situations where you really need a friend, but somebody who can negotiate and bring you down or whatever needs to happen. It's very, very powerful.
And it really resonates today, I think, of all days. I was having I do a monthly call with like a junior lawyer drop-in, and one of the topics we were talking about this morning was about one of the juniors was having to write a series of claims letters, so basically responding to individuals who were either hadn't paid and so they were being pushed for payment, or companies that had made claims and they were having to push back on them. And she said she was really, really struggling with it because she felt like she was having to be inauthentic to herself by adopting this persona, which was this kind of, I suppose, stereotypical lawyer, really hard-nosed, really hard-hitting, and we were talking actually about this adult to adult conversation. We were talking about nonviolent communication. And it does make me think that there's in society, we almost think that to get our point across, we have to be really kind of bullish and really almost quite aggressive with it. But actually, I think listening to Nigel is just this perfect reminder that that isn't the case at all. The most successful negotiators aren't the people that go in there shouting and, stamping their feet. They're the people who stop, pause, listen, and really connect.
Yeah. And that kind of that like listening so that you can really connect with someone, to find the commonality. I love when Nigel was talking about that, about what he's looking for is commonality and real genuine commonality to chat about, to actually kind of bridge that kind of understanding of people who might be very, very different, but actually we all have some commonalities, and using that as a kind of a superpower. I just sort of think that works across everything that everybody does in business, in life, at home, at work. It's the important, comes back to that importance of being able to sort of network a little bit and chat, isn't it? It's being able to find those things that we can just feel easy with of a chat. So,
but being authentic as well, and being able, because that's the thing about the commonality, isn't it? When we were talking to him, it's about finding a really authentic commonality. It's like the worst thing you can do is lie, and because you'll be or be inauthentic to yourself. So it's kind of looking for that hook that you can kind of latch onto that is authentic, because you'll come across like that. And I mean, I think we've all met people who we just don't gel with. And quite often, for me, certainly, it's because I don't feel like they're being authentic. I don't feel like they are giving me who they actually are. And I know I struggle with that. Automatically, I feel defensive. So it does really go to the power of that.
Being genuine is so, so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So incredibly powerful, and a really generous man as well. Like, he's given us so much time, and and I'll never forget. And maybe this comes back to like the authenticity piece, is that when he spoke at Thrive in March, he hung around for the rest of the evening, laid his train, just so that he could kind of meet and chat to people. And I just thought, that says a lot, because a lot of speakers come in and do their bit and then leave again, understandably, because they're very busy people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was awesome. And I think, a lot of people, and, I still think about what he says. I still think about this kind of holding space, asking the questions, kind of owning the room as well, because I was always quite fascinated about that, about how you sort of arrive and are pushed forward into this situation with blue lights behind you, and how do you get in the zone, and how do you kind of own that space?
Yeah. I'm so excited he's speaking at How to Thrive Vet. I think it's just such a treat to be able to listen to him. I think people will find it so interesting and learn lots from it.
Yeah. And then he's got his top three, his top tips for thriving, which Helen and I were like, this is a pretty awesome set of values.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, be kind to yourself. Yeah, yes, check. Love this thing where the whole thing about listening, but basically don't listen to your negative self-talk. The example you were giving, Helen, about was it you are the negotiator? You are the negotiator, not a negotiator.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Continually learning. I think it's like he's stolen our values, actually. He's stolen ours. And then don't take life too seriously, which...
Yeah. So important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So always keen to hear more from Nigel. I'd love to know what everybody thinks. And if you can make it to How to Thrive in the VET event in September, then do come. So we have a whole host of brilliant sessions. But if you come for only Nigel's, I was about to say Nigel, and then I got very self-conscious that I sound like his mother. So if you come for Nigel's, which is, won't tell her when it is actually, because otherwise you might just come for it, but come for the whole day because it's phenomenal. But he'll be rounding things off.
You sort of gave it away. I'm not.
Oh God, I did. Oh, I'm so rubbish.
He'll be rounding things off. Stay here for more secrets you thought you'd never hear.
Oh man, I'm really bad. Oh dear. Don't tell me any of your secrets, everybody. I will smash them all without releasing. That is if I'm listening. If I'm listening in the first part, and then I'll probably smash them. Sorry. But there we go. So yes, thank you everybody. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as we love recording them. As always, I'm going to put a shout out and sound a bit cringe by saying, if you like this podcast, please will you like, what do you have to do? Like, subscribe. Follow. That's it.
Yeah.
Please will you do
Tell
that,
your
folks?
friends. Put it on the
Tell all
Jungle
your
Telegraph,
friends.
whatever it is you need to do.
do it all. Just tell everybody. Shout from the rooftops. But yeah. And let us know what you think as well. And if you've got any guests that you think would be awesome, then do let me know. We've got a fabulous list of people coming up, but we're always really keen to have suggestions too.
Definitely.
Have a fabulous week, Helen. And
yes, you too.
I will speak to you anon, as our mother used to say.
I think she still says it.
Ta-ra!
Bye-bye.
Just before we say goodbye, I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to Flank, our sponsor for the How to Thrive podcast. Without their support, it would be much, much harder for us to share the wonderful learnings from our guests. So thank you so much, Flank. And if you'd like to find out more about how they can support your legal operations, please go to getflank.ai. If you enjoyed the podcast, please check out our website at www.being-human.co.uk to find out how we can support you and your team to thrive.